Welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Your weekly dose of news and advice that comes to your pocket every single Saturday. Holding it down, here we got Mack, Mark, Scott, and Landon. Enjoy today's show. We are back with another Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. This is episode 77, and a happy Halloween to all of you. It's Saturday, November 2nd, but we are still in the Halloween spirit. Hopefully you are too. I had a lot of fun giving out some candy, seeing all the great costumes this year. But right now we are focused on week 9. Halloween has passed. We're still fired up, but we are ready for week 9 and giving you our look at the playoff primer. So what you need to do, who you need to pick up, who you need to target in trades before your deadline to make the most of a big push. Boys, so glad to see you guys still in costume. Hopefully you guys had as much fun as I did.
Yeah, Mackie, it's been a good time. It's been a busy week for myself. I've been working a lot, but I'm fully still in fantasy mode. I'm having a great time. And you're right, Mac. This is the time when it's time to start looking at your playoff schedules, strength of schedule coming up. And a huge thing we're going to talk about today is trading for players that are done their bye week. You're gaining in a week, and then and trading
Hopefully
away.
getting a nice schedule.
Yeah, and getting a nice schedule and trading away a player that still needs to go through his bye week. So it's a huge difference. Scotty, how you doing? You want a treat, boy?
Boys, I love Halloween, so I'm fired up for a whole bunch of different reasons. But just like Landon said, you know what? The timing of this episode could not be better because it's never too early to start looking forward to the playoffs. And I really think that's what separates the guys who just luck into trying to win to those who win with thought and forethought. Right now is the time where you can make the moves that we're talking about today, and I think it's just so smart to do this primer right now. I'm fired up. Woof woof. Good boy. Let's get him.
Woo!
Hey, what's up, guys? Nice to be back in the sesh for another big preview here. I love the fact that we're talking about the playoffs right now. I personally made a super gutty trade with another one of the members of this podcast last
Yes,
week.
you did.
So maybe we can touch a little bit on that, Mac. Why don't you give the fans an idea of what I'm talking about?
We made a big trade in Dynasty. I basically blew up my Dynasty team, as I told you guys a couple weeks ago. I've since traded off Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. I've decided to keep Leonard Fournette, but Mark and I made a nice little deal. I am very wide receiver needy with a couple aging wide receivers going down, Gronk retiring on me, and it was time to move on from Todd Gurley. Mark is in a championship contending spot with Scott.
Hold
They're
on,
both making
hold
a
on,
run for
hold
the
on.
title.
I lost 4 straight. I have just lost 4 straight after winning 4 straight. So I think it's safe to say I was in a dire spot.
Okay, sure. But now, you guys are both in the top of the playoff race, you and Scotty. You're a little bit behind. I think you're only one game behind Scott, right?
Incorrect,
6-2 and 5-3.
I'm 4-4, and he is 7-1, I believe.
That is correct. I am, in fact, 7-1, and it is a mammoth of a
You would never
team.
think it. Either way, I don't really care about your record.
Yours ain't good.
We decided to make a trade. This is sort of like a playoff push for Mark. We decided in Dynasty to trade Todd Gurley for Odell Beckham Jr.
It's a big trade.
I definitely needed the wide receiver help, and Mark needed the running back help. So what do you guys think about this deal? As being two other contestants in this league.
It's interesting on my side. It's funny. Mackenzie and I were looking at trades involving Odell Beckham Jr. because we'll talk about him a little bit later. And there are 3 trades that happened today involving
On Yahoo
for straight up Odell and Todd Gurley. So you're not the only two that think this is a fair deal. Now, Dynasty makes it a little bit different. Odell
It does.
is a wide receiver. He's got a fairly young quarterback, although Baker's not playing very well lately. Wide receivers normally last longer in the league as a general rule of thumb. Not to say this could be different. Todd Gurley very well could outlast Odell, but generally they don't. And with Todd Gurley's knee issues, we're not sure if he's going to last that long either. Either way, I think it's an interesting trade. I think McKenzie got what he wanted. He got an underperforming Odell. He got top dollar for his Gurley shares, and that's what he's been wanting all along.
It was a big improvement from the DK Metcalf that I was offered.
Yeah, you see, you say that, but let's look what happened last week. And,
He had 2 touchdowns on 13 yards?
He had 2 touchdowns. Only time will tell if this is actually a massive upgrade over DK Metcalf, because the Dynasty League implications of this always complicates these type of deals. I agree with everything
Scott.
Landon is saying. I do think it's good to shake up for both sides. I do think running backs will flame out before wide receivers, so I do think snatching OBJ for Todd Gurley is a smart play on your part. But we all know that, as you said, DK Metcalf was about as high as I was willing to offer for Todd Gurley, and that says about how much I value his health right now.
Fair enough.
So
Listen,
if
we are
I
on
may-
Instagram.
If I may.
Okay, you can. Yep.
I think for this trade, I think I can get so easily bogged down thinking about trades by reading about what other people did. But I think this was a big time gut trade for me. And I think sometimes the gut mentality gets a little bit overlooked with all the analysis that's out there. And that's kind of the way I was feeling that day. And I'm still happy I made the call. So we'll see how it pans out for both of us. But I don't know. It is when I actually looked at it, I didn't realize that Todd Gurley's younger than OBJ. Crazy.
He is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So anyways,
So
looking forward to it.
So listen, guys, we are on Instagram and on Twitter. Those are our biggest social media platforms. You can get us there at SMS_fantasy. If you want to get the guys individually, their handles are in the episode description. A quick shout out to all of the listeners or watchers. If you're viewing us on YouTube and you see this beautiful Clark Kent little Superman costume we got going on here, and the boys dressed up too. Wherever you guys are, however you may be listening, we all appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and being here each and every week. Before we get into our playoff primer, we want to just reflect on the trade deadline. I mean, it came and it went, and other than the biggest highlights from last week came early in the week, and that's not typically the trade deadline that we're used to seeing. But Sanu and who was the other one? Sorry, Sanders were the 2 biggest trades. And Kenyon Drake to the Cardinals came in on Sunday. He did not travel with the team. They probably could have used him, but that's another story. So Kenyon Drake to the Cardinals. That's really all we have to take from this trade deadline. And I want to kind of open up this discussion very briefly. Did the Cardinals acquire Kenyon Drake because Chase Edmonds went down and they need another backup? Or is it because they are fearful of David Johnson's health moving forward and they need a stud-ish running back?
So by the time everyone listens to this podcast, we'll see the Thursday night game. As of right now, Wednesday night, David Johnson's a game-time decision. I don't expect him to play. So I think Kenyon Drake is the only backfield there. Chase Edmonds is already ruled out from when we're recording now. So we'll see what happens. I guess we can talk about it next week to see how Kenyon Drake did against the stout San Francisco defense. But I think this is just bad news for the outlook of David Johnson long term. Chase Edmonds, Zach Zenner, everyone in that backfield. That's just. I think they just need to fill roster spots right now. And Kenyon Drake was a pretty good price for a veteran running back.
I got more offers for DJ this past week than I ever have gotten in fantasy. And it really makes me think the sentiment around this, at least with fantasy owners, seems to be that this is more about David Johnson and preparing for perhaps a week-to-week type situation with him, with a guy like Drake.
Right. We've got some notable quarterback changes happening so far, and some of them have to do with injury, and some of them have to do with just total team change. So we've got Brandon Allen starting for the Broncos. Joe Flacco is expected to be out for multiple weeks. His timeline is not yet officially diagnosed, but Joe Flacco is out, and Drew Lock was just reactivated. Not sure if he's going to make his debut this week or not, but right now Brandon Allen is named the starter for the Denver Broncos. Ryan Finley is going to be starting for the Bengals after Andy Dalton has been benched on his birthday.
I was going to say that.
What a kick in the teeth. Happy birthday to Andy Dalton. Sit on the bench, my friend. And then this isn't official. We might know more throughout the week. Hopefully by the time you see or listen to this, you will have found out. But as of right now, it's just rumored based off other Redskins on Twitter that Dwayne Haskins is actually going to be making another start this week for the Redskins. So only time will tell what that situation shakes out. But if you had to play, let's just, hypothetically, if you had to play one of these guys, who's it going to be? Is it Brandon Allen for the Broncos, Ryan Finley for the Bengals, or Dwayne Haskins for the Skins? Life is on the line. You need one of them.
I think I'd have to go
To
with
give you
Haskins
250 and
mostly
2.
for the legs.
He's not a runner, though. He's slow. He proved that in the combine. He can't run.
He is a pocket passing machine.
I think
I don't know if he's a
maybe
machine right now.
maybe Allen, because Philip Lindsay is probably the best running back out of these three teams options, and anytime that
And
there's
pass catching.
anytime that there's a liable option at running back, it opens up other things for the offense. Which, I mean, Cortland Sutton's been playing really well.
He has.
I just wish there were, if I could say there were multiple players on either the Bengals or Redskins offense right now, I would be lying. So at least the Broncos have two.
The problem with these quarterbacks starting is that they have fantasy viable assets hooked and attached to them. Cortland Sutton, like we talked about, has been awesome. Philip Lindsay has been decent. Tyler Boyd has been really good. Same with Auden Tate. And then we have the Terry McLaurin breakout coming in. And Haskins, he came in because Case Keenum got injured. And it was rough. It was really rough. That whole Redskins team is rough. So the problem is every one of these fantasy assets right now gets a downgrade until we see different. So if trading for one of the players on these teams makes it a little bit harder, it might give you the opportunity to buy low on them. Like a guy like Cortland Sutton, he doesn't quite have that starry outlook that you had before with Joe Flacco.
Right.
Not to say he's not going to be bad, because he's still a great, talented receiver, but he doesn't. The outlook, so the perception of him is now decreased. So now you could probably buy Cortland Sutton for a low price.
Right. My inkling is that I want to root for Dwayne Haskins because I really love Terry McLaurin and Kelvin Harmon. I'm just not sure that it's going to happen for him this week, just based on what we've seen in the past. I don't really believe in the Bengals offense at all, so I'm going to go with Brandon Allen for the Broncos out of these three. But let's face it, we're not playing any of these guys. So
if you are,
it
you're
is
in
what
trouble.
it is.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. One more thing before we jump in. If you guys want data like we have each and every week at your fingertips, at your convenience, go over and check out the guys at Fanatic, FANATIQ, on the App Store. Download the app, go through the data. They are constantly, keeping things up to date and providing you different news streams. Everything is in one spot. You can also get stuff directly from us in the app through, their sponsored sources. So go and check them out. Again, it's Fanatic, FANATIQ. Win your week, win your league. Get onto Fanatic. Okay, this is the main event, guys. We are jumping into trades and players that you should try to acquire before your trade deadline is up. Most, defaults are week 10. So you're looking to maybe make a play for these guys this week or the next. And basically what we're trying to do here is acquire players that have, one, already had their bye weeks, and 2 who have a great schedule, ideally if in weeks 14, 15, and 16, your fantasy championships. If you play in a, week 17 championship, get out of that league. Get your commissioner to change it. That's garbage. We play 14, 15, 16 because week 17, there's just a lot of people that don't play, and it's not fair. So make that change if that's what you're going through. So I think it's only natural we kick things off with the quarterback, and we talk about maybe some of these guys that we try to pick up and who we might trade for if that's the case. There's going to be a lot less trading, though, in this segment with this position, just because a lot of these quarterbacks can be streamed. And we're not saying that because you pick them up now, you shouldn't hold them for the rest of the year, but it's not a plug-and-play option. It is a play-in-favorable matchup type option. So I'll flip it over to you guys. Which one of you wants to start? And just give her.
So I'll start with mine. And he's one of my favorite quarterbacks for this year. He hasn't overwhelmed anyone. He hasn't really won anyone many weeks, but he's got a really good playoff schedule. Now, for everyone listening, we are on limited time, so for all of our patrons here, we're gonna post a full list to our Patreon website. So if you are interested in our full list of players to get you through the playoffs and to win your fantasy leagues, join us on Patreon, our community there. We're trying to grow, and we'll keep it going. So here we go. I'm going to go with Carson Wentz. He is right now QB 11 on the season, but he's got a juicy schedule. He's got the Giants, Washington, and Dallas. I think Philadelphia has an outside chance at getting into the playoffs, fighting for that wild card spot. They're kind of on a roller coaster ride where they get a bad beat, and then they come back and surprise everyone against the Bills. So hopefully Deshaun Jackson is back. That's going to really help Carson Wentz. You see Dallas Goedert be a great end zone target. And Zach Ertz. I mean, defense are scheming for Zach Ertz. He's been
You've seen it.
Underwhelming for what you wanted from him. He's still a top 12 tight end, but he's not what you wanted, and it's not what you drafted. So I think he will come into his own, and Carson Wentz has a great schedule. I doubt he's going to be dropped, and you could probably get him in a combo trade because he hasn't won people weeks, so he might be on a team that just is going to give up.
Now, Carson Wentz is a name that has a lot of value, and he's not going to be on your waiver wires. He's probably owned in 95+% of leagues. So,
for sure.
Who would you be willing to trade? You said maybe a package deal, but who would you be willing to trade to give away to try to get Carson Wentz?
That is a good question, Mackenzie.
Coming to my mind, I'm thinking, maybe a Josh Allen plus.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. He kind of came straight to my mind as well. I do like Josh Allen. So let's see some trades that happened today with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz and Tevin Coleman for Stafford and Dorsett. That's a silly trade.
I would do that deal. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I would. Yep. Kirk Cousins straight up for Carson Wentz. That's a very lateral move.
It's lateral, but if the schedule, so we'll talk about this too, but like the some of the trades that we present to you tonight or the advice we give to you might appear very lateral, but if you can trade away a player who, already had their bye and you pick up a player who already had their bye and you give away somebody that has a bye and has a better schedule, you're getting a player of equal value per se, but they have one more game they can play for you and a favorable matchup or matchups. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. They might appear lateral, but there's more underlying. And people aren't going to be thinking about these things when they go and make trades. They're just going to say, oh, man, like Carson Wentz for Kirk Cousins. Like, oh, let me see. Oh, Kirk Cousins has been the quarterback 8 on the year. Yeah, I'll take that. But they don't look at everything else.
And so the Eagles have a Week 10 bye. So Carson Wentz very well could be dropped that week. So if he is, check out that waiver wire in Week 10. It's a bye-apocalypse. There's tons of teams on bye that week. There's 6 of them in total. So that might be the week to really check the waivers and stash them.
Mm-hmm. Good call, Lando. I guess I'll go next here and talk about a representative of the team I love who hasn't been playing necessarily great football recently, and that's Jameis
bias
Winston.
here, though.
No, honestly, I try to steer away from it because it's just been atrocious trying to watch him. He is still plagued with his unpredictable nature and ballsy attitude, and doesn't really seem all that. He doesn't really seem to be under the gun from his head coach,
Correct.
which is probably a bit of a problem in itself. But anyhow, Jameis Winston is right now the QB 14, and we know that he has two of the best receivers in the game on him right now, and he has got a money schedule coming up in the playoff push. So honestly, you probably wouldn't have to pay up too high to get Jameis Winston. And weeks 14, 15, 16, he goes Indianapolis, Detroit, Houston, which I mean, that's as juicy as it gets for someone who with as good of an arm as him, and despite turnovers, still puts up such good numbers. It's a team that's,
They're always fighting. They're always throwing the ball. Like it's great. Like he turns the ball over and creates a negative game script for the Bucks, which now produces a great fantasy quarterback.
Well, and you're right. I mean, he is the type of rigorous player that doesn't give up throughout a game. So as disappointing as he may seem, even 3 quarters through, there's still always upside for Jameis. And also, I mean, you gotta notice that they don't have much of a run game going for them at all. So you can bank on him always throwing the ball a ton in every game. So yeah, Jameis Winston would be probably pretty easily obtained, I'm thinking right now, and could be that guy down the stretch.
Yeah, I'm just taking a look at his ownership percentage. It's 78%. So he's owned in 3/4 of leagues. There's in most of the leagues I play in, he is up and down on teams dropped, and that's probably going to continue throughout the rest of the season. But yeah, I mean, Jameis in the latter part of the rest of season schedule, he's going to be pretty valuable, and I love his weapons. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are fantastic, and hopefully the run game can pick up just a little bit. But yeah, I like this pick.
Cool. Are we going to move on to another position, guys? We have a few more, but we're going to save it for our patrons. Is that the idea?
No, I mean, let's try to fit these last 2 in. And,
okay.
Give as much as we can here. So I'll go real quick. I love Jacoby Brissett, quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. He's right now the quarterback 19 on the season. He's been steady all year, and he does sit at 19. I know it's on a sexy number, but basically 11 of the 18 guys ahead of him have yet to have their bye. So he actually sits 20 points behind what would be considered quarterback 1 or even like a top 10 spot. And so you have those guys, take a week away. That could potentially be 15 to 25 or 30 points. So Jacoby Brissett is in that top 10 fantasy quarterback conversation. And when I look at him with his schedule, Miami, Jacksonville, Houston, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Carolina to finish, that is juicy. And points per game wise, he ranks tied for 12th right now. So in the final weeks, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Carolina, Brissett's only owned in 61% of leagues, so there's a really, really good chance that he's on your waiver wire. He's not a guy that I would trade for, but if you can scoop him and plug and play in these really solid matchups like Miami, Jacksonville, Houston, Tampa Bay, even New Orleans can be thrown on. I really, really like Jacoby Brissett and the Colts to make up a push for their playoff season as well as your fantasy playoff season.
It's a solid pick, and I'll wrap it up quickly. For my pick, I'm actually going deep dumpster diving, and this is a very streamable quarterback, but it's somebody that a lot of people aren't considering. It is the current starter for the Tennessee Titans, Ryan Tannehill. Now, ever since he's taken over for Marcus Mariota, he's brought that passing attack back to life, if there ever was life in the passing game in Tennessee. Now, the thing that makes him so attractive and a sneaky stream is that his playoff schedule is pretty solid. You're looking at Oakland in Week 14, then the Texans, and then the Saints. So if you're being strategic and you're in a position where you have to stream quarterbacks, this is somebody who you could potentially stash for those potential games in the playoffs. If you're just going week to week, it never hurts to grab somebody like Tannehill. And then if he continues playing the way he has been, you might be in a great prime position with his schedule, because it's really hard to beat those 3 games when everything's on the line if you don't have a week to week plug and play starter.
Yeah, he's only 22% owned, and you know, not a lot of
Absolutely.
people have a lot of confidence in Tannehill, but I don't disagree with you. I mean, A.J. Brown has been a lot more intriguing since Tannehill took over, which is great. I love that. And Jonnu Smith was one of our biggest suggestions to you as listeners for, you know, your waiver wire pickups this week. He's another asset that I think Tannehill can lean on and can be productive. So it's definitely not a sexy pick, Scott, but you know,
But
it's
an
definitely one that
accessible
is
pick, and sometimes
available.
you have to balance off the 80% owned guys with this guy could be a diamond in the rough. That if you have no quarterback, for injury or trade purposes, this guy could save your playoffs.
Hey, he's got as many
100%.
wins as Winston.
Yikes. All right, well, that's a good preview for quarterbacks. Let's jump into running backs next. All right, so we're looking for running backs that are potentially going to give you that championship. And this is the sexiest part of your team. This is where the meat and potatoes are of your, you know, if you look at your fantasy team as a meal, this is where it's at. And this is where we want to spend our time. So for me, a running back that jumps out who has already had their bye week, who has a fantastic opportunity, no competition in the backfield, is none other than New York Jets running back, who's still a New York Jet, didn't get traded, Le'Veon Bell. He is currently the running back 23. And I know you're thinking, Mac, why the heck do you want to acquire this guy? I've made a case for Le'Veon Bell 2 episodes ago, a guy that I really wanted to target and get on my team. And I did. I put my money where my mouth is. These guys can attest to it. I picked up Le'Veon Bell in several leagues. He's had a slow start, but so have the Jets. They've had a tough schedule to start the year. They've also been without Sam Darnold, and that just, you know, causes problems for chemistry. And, you know, Le'Veon Bell hasn't really been able to get as many touches as maybe he would have liked. So if you look at the rest of Le'Veon Bell's season, he has one of the easiest strengths of schedules remaining in the Leafs pre-playoffs for sure. Plays Miami, the Giants, the Redskins, the Raiders, the Bengals, and the Dolphins again. When it comes to playoff weeks 14, 15, 16, we're looking at Dolphins, Ravens, and Steelers. So Ravens, Steelers, not the most ideal, but Le'Veon Bell, if you are in a position where you are, say, 4-4 or 3-5, and you really need to get that piece that might win you week after week, I think when you look at this schedule pre-playoffs, he's going to be super, super strong. And at that point, I won't have any hesitation to play him in the playoffs. Someone I'd be looking to trade Le'Veon Bell for would be Chris Carson of the Seattle Seahawks. He is currently the running back 8. He has been great. He's had his fumbling issues. Rashad Penny did not get traded, so there's still some competition in that backfield. He still has a bye week left in week 11, and he plays Philadelphia, Minnesota, Carolina, and San Francisco, who have all been fairly solid against the run. So I'm looking to pivot off Chris Carson, cash in on that value, and get myself some Le'Veon Bell.
And you might be able to get Le'Veon Plus for Chris Carson.
You might.
Seeing how Carson...
And that's where I would start the trading process, right?
Yeah.
You never want to start too low. I would go, Le'Veon Bell plus whoever, a fringe wide receiver 3, and put Chris Carson up there.
So, Mac, I love the Le'Veon Bell selection, but that is not a secret that Lev has a good schedule. So I'm going to go with a diamond in the rough here, a rookie that has started off the year really slow. But you know what? If you're a fan of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, you know that I predicted that he was going to have a slow start, and this is the time to trade for Philadelphia running back Miles Sanders. He's currently the running back 26, and this past week he had a shoulder injury, but he's set to go this week, and he's got a good playoff schedule as well. They have the Giants, Washington, and Dallas to finish in your championship week. And Miles Sanders has shown that he's been Very agile, explosive, can catch out of the backfield. And I get it. It's scary. You're trading for a guy that it's in a timeshare with Jordan Howard. So far, Jordan Howard is the goal line running back. But I'm going to tell you that the skill will be good enough for him to stay on the field, be productive between the 20s. He might lose that goal line work, but I think it's going to be good. And I say roll the dice on Miles Sanders. Who I would trade for Miles Sanders? I'd probably go with a quarterback. I would trade Dak Prescott for Miles Sanders, and you might be able to get Miles Sanders plus for a guy like Dak Prescott, who's the hype is real in Dallas, or a guy like John Brown, a guy that is paired to a inaccurate quarterback, a deep threat. John Brown can give you a great big week, but he can give you a bust. So if you can get a running back that is that they're harder to attain, but you can actually afford to get Miles Sanders right now, especially with that little questionable take beside his name. So that's who I'm going after for my playoff push.
Dak feels like way too much.
Doesn't
it
it,
would
though?
have to be Sanders plus. Yeah, and it absolutely is. I mean, Dak Prescott is the quarterback 6 already serving a bye week, so he's been fantastic.
Yep.
I do want to let the record show, though, Landon, like, you do this with like 40 rookie running backs every single year. So, I mean, you're only bound to hit one of them.
I throw so many darts. I throw so many dodgeballs, if you will. I'm bound to hit a couple targets.
You hit the broadside of a barn with this one. Yeah.
Well, because you said throwing darts, I feel like you were segueing to my pick. But the player I'm selecting was one of the hottest names at the beginning of the season. And I feel like just around now is actually the time that he's starting to look like the player that fantasy owners were hoping he would come out of the gates looking like. And that is Mr. David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears. Now, up until now, if you took him early in the first or second round where he was going, it's been tough sledding. But we started to see just a fantastic performance last week, 27 carries, 135 yards against the Chargers. And you know what? I think this is a turning point for him, and I think the good times are going to keep rolling. Now, when we're looking at his playoff schedule, it's looking pretty good. You're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, the much improved Green Bay Packers, Mack, I'll give you that, and the Kansas City Chiefs. So Chiefs,
I'll just jump
Cowboys,
in real quick, though.
Not really scaring anybody. Jump in.
Well, and the problem here, like, you look, Dallas, Green Bay, KC, Green Bay and Kansas City, as well as Dallas, have been okay defenses, but Green Bay really excels against the pass, but they struggle against the run. They're like bottom 10 in the run. So is KC. So from a passing standpoint, this might not be the best matchup, and that's why we're not going to put up, especially because they have Mitch Trubisky, we're not going to put up Chicago Bears wide receivers against these defenses. However, on the ground, which if the Bears are going to be successful, Montgomery has to be involved at a high rate. Matt Nagy should have figured this out by now. That's why we love them against these defenses.
Well, absolutely, and I think that's one of the most valuable things right now is I think they actually have figured out that their path to success does not run through Mitch Trubisky. It really goes through him handing off. I honestly think that you can get him for almost not a song right now, but I almost pulled off myself last week Tyrell Williams trade for him. And with all the nagging injuries on a guy like Tyrell Williams, if you need a running back, I would totally make that trade. Like I said, I almost pulled it off. It didn't quite come through, and my timing would not have been better. It could not have been better if I pulled it off. But I think somebody like Tyrell Williams, who has had a great season per games played as far as touchdowns, but if he doesn't catch those touchdowns week to week, you're in trouble. So I could see a guy like Tyrell Williams, maybe a guy like Jordan Howard, who has a brutal schedule leading up to the actual playoffs there. If you could flip and end up with a guy like David Montgomery, he may end up being the very high-priced fantasy asset that he was supposed to be just halfway through the season.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I like that take, Scotty. I am going to talk about a couple fairly high up there running backs, I guess. Ish. Ish. Guys who have pretty poor O lines, but I'm going to go with one, and that's Philip Lindsay, who I already brought up earlier. And I like this guy for a lot of reasons. So Denver's passing game obviously is a mixed bag. We don't know what to expect from Joe Flacco's replacement in Brandon Allen. Obviously, this coach has to commit more to the run. That is just the reality of when a new quarterback goes in. Also, however, coaching got called out a little bit for not being aggressive last week. And I feel like that should totally make the coaching staff shake their head in Denver. And I feel like they've got to use this dynamic guy, Philip Lindsay, for what he's worth. He is great in open space, great pass catching back. And when he puts his head down, he will floor people. And I mean, I've talked about this guy before. I just really like his playing style. He's got grit, and he's made things work on a team that does have a poor O-line. So if you look at his playoff opponents, he's going to be going against Houston, KC, and Detroit.
That's great.
And that
Which
is
is
just
great.
that is just sweet, right? That is, you can't beat that. So yeah, and at the end of the day, I think Philip Lindsay's about to really take off. He's been playing, like we said, decently, but I feel like he's really about to take off. What do I think he's worth?
Yeah, who would you trade for a guy like Philip Lindsay?
So this one, I feel like I would want to dump off someone like Derrick Henry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Don't be too
So-
excited, Mackenzie.
Get rid of Derrick Henry at all costs.
Statistically, you probably hate him. No, I'm just kidding. It's not based off stats. I think you just unfairly hate him, Mac.
No, last year I was proven very right by Derrick.
Yeah, well. So here's why I think he could be worth getting rid of. So the passing attack is growing there. We know that Derrick Henry is going to keep getting the ball, but things are a little more exciting than the constant handing off that Mariota's offense did. Their offensive line in Tennessee is awful. So he's not that dynamic of a guy either. He's the type of player that will run straight forward and not really deviate very much from that. The odd time he does break through for big gains, but and his numbers show that he is fairly consistent. But I mean, in his playoff, he does have a Week 11 bye for one thing, and his playoff run it's not terrible, but he does face New Orleans in a championship week. So with those two factors and just his somewhat poor offensive line in front of him, I would be willing to take a risk, get rid of him, and go for Philip Lindsay.
That is a
Just
bold
going back to the
move.
Joe Flacco thing, he was doing his best Michael Scott, like boom roasted on the coordination of the offense, which I thought was great. You'd never
He didn't
see
hold
anything
back.
out of Joe Flacco. No, he was boom roasted.
And he was good for those pass catchers. He's good for fantasy. As much as we hate on the real life production of Joe Flacco, he was good for the fantasy output.
No doubt. 100%. So let's jump into our wide receivers that we want to target going in. This will be our last positional category we will touch on. I realize that we haven't talked about the teams on bye right now. And so you're not going to see any Falcons, Bengals, Rams, or Saints in this preview or in this strategy because it's going to be really hard to extract a player or acquire a player who is on bye because, they just don't give you any value as a player. And if you're trying to get them from somebody else, it just might be tough, especially, given their situation. So that's why we're staying away from people on a week 9 bye. But week 10 is notable. There are 6 teams on bye. It's the only time the whole year where there's been 6 teams on bye. We got the Broncos, Texans, Jags, Patriots, Eagles, and Redskins. A lot of fantasy relevant players there. So a lot of teams are going to get crushed by what we call the bye-pocalypse. The big 6 team bye, and then weeks 11 and 12 are quite crazy as well. You got the Packers and the Seahawks in week 11, and you've got the Cardinals, Chiefs, Chargers, and Vikings in week 12. That is a very, very scary bye week to have, especially in week 12 when you might desperately need a victory. So keep your eyes out for week 10 and 12. Very, very notable weeks.
That's a good point.
So who wants to kick things off here? Let's go back to Landon.
Yeah, so here's a wide receiver. I've talked about him before. He's usually a second half boom guy, but he does have a week 12 bye week. So if you need to get in, I might stay away from him. But if you're looking really good right now, you've got a good record and you can afford to buy him and buy him low, I would buy Keenan Allen. He's ranked number 12.
Oh, second half, Keenan Allen.
That's it. If you know me, you know we've said that before. So
Keenan Allen, if you guys are watching on YouTube, Keenan Allen looks like me second half of the season. He is just going in.
He's going
turning into Superman.
Yeah, his first half is his kryptonite.
Oh,
So he's currently ranked as the wide receiver 12. But you can buy him low right now because of his recent form. And he even tweeted out that he's sorry to his fantasy owners for letting us down. So they just fired their offensive coordinator. So I really think that this could be a turnaround for the Chargers.
For the Chargers.
Yeah.
Which
sorry.
I think was a mistake, by the way. I don't think they should have fired Ken Whisenhunt. I thought that was not deserved.
I also agree with you. And there's some... They should have... Melvin Gordon should have got into the end zone in that... And the goal line stand. Either way, it doesn't matter. We're not really sure what's going to happen. Some people are saying that they're going to get a better offense. They're going to run with Melvin Gordon more. Some people think that maybe they'll just stick with Austin Eckler. Either way, people are uncertain. And this is why there's a chance you can buy Keenan Allen at a super low price because everyone's thinking about what have you done for me lately. People are forgot about week 1 and 3. Week 3, he put up over 30 points. Nobody cares about that right now. People just care that they've lost with Keenan Allen. Maybe they're down on their teams, so this is the chance to buy. They don't
they're ready to besmirch him.
Exactly. They're on paper, week 14, 15 isn't great. Jacksonville and Minnesota. We've seen Minnesota get beat by these. Xavier Rhodes is not the corner he used to be, but then in week 16 they have Oakland. So as long as you can afford that week 12 buy, go buy Keenan Allen right now. You can get him for a deal. I even am willing to give up Stephon Diggs for Keenan Allen.
Ooh, bold claim, Cotton.
Yeah, keep it going,
Let's
guys.
see how it works out for him. Here's the thing, though, like with Keenan Allen. Yeah, you say Jacksonville, Minnesota, not the best matchups. Some guys are matchup proof. And they are not the rule. They are the exception to the rule. Keenan Allen has the talent and capability with Phillip Rivers to beat the Jags, to beat the Vikings, whoever they put on him. So, there's a big focus, whoever plays the Chargers, to stop the run with Gordon and Eckler. I think Keenan Allen will be fine.
Nice. I'll carry on and talk about a dude who may
I
not.
thought you were.
What? No, I'm not gonna make a pun.
Yeah.
But
okay,
you
all right.
do love those. Everyone does.
I do.
You all love those. You. So I'm going to talk about a guy, Alshon Jeffrey, and why we should try and obtain him. I know, might sound kind of crazy,
It's
but here's why. So this offense has come up to me as a bit inconsistent in the fact that you don't really know who is going to blow up and get the points for them. Without Deshaun Jackson, their passing attack has been quite limited to Alshon and Goddard and Ertz. And a little bit of Aguilar here and there, but I do like Alshon. I like the amount of targets he gets, and I like what he makes out of them. So right now they are about to face Chicago this week, then take a bye week, and then New England. I feel like people are going to be getting rid of Alshon Jeffrey. If not, they're going to be keeping him on the bench for 3 straight weeks. So I feel like if you can get a hold of him and stash him for his playoff push, that's where he's going to be worth it. So down the stretch, he's going to be facing the Giants, the Skins, and the Cowboys. So divisional games, they're going to be big, and I feel like he's going to have to play clutch, and he has been good. So Yeah, here's a guy that might be a little bit of an unconventional one, sitting at the wide receiver 34, but I'd be willing to go for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. One point I didn't get to make with the Miles Sanders versus Jordan Howard part in the running backs. We said buy Miles Sanders, but we said potentially trade away Jordan Howard to get yourself a David Montgomery. The reason why I like Miles Sanders, and the same sort of logic applies to Alshon Jeffrey, in the weeks where the Eagles are going to have to play the Bears, the Patriots, and the Seahawks and go through their bye, that's going to be a tough schedule for Jordan Howard as the primary runner. He's not the greatest pass catcher, but I love Miles Sanders in those matchups because he's a pass catcher. So I think it's a downgrade for Jordan Howard. That's why we're telling you to sell him. But Miles Sanders and Alshon Jeffrey should be quite successful in those quote-unquote tough matchups.
Yeah, Sanders is a good take there, too, for that reason, Matt. Good call.
Exactly, yeah.
Solid pick there, Mackie. I'm going to finish us off strong here. And my pick is one that you never think. It's funny how fast things change in the league. Who would think that this would be a playoff primer pick? But Odell Beckham Jr. Other years, you would have think this is the locked and loaded pick, but that's just not the case anymore. And that's why I think this is someone that you should be targeting hard. OBJ right now is WR 29. So people who have had him all season long, they're fed up. They're ready to ship him out, and this is a prime time to grab him. Listen, he's targeted 9 times a week on average, and before the playoffs even roll around, he faces Miami and Pittsburgh twice each. Now, that is a great lead up to the playoffs, and then once he actually hits the fantasy playoffs, you're looking at Cincinnati, Arizona, and Baltimore. Now, outside of Baltimore, I really like Odell's chances. On top of that, on a personal note, Odell loves the attention. He loves to make big plays. And I really just think in my gut down the stretch that OBJ is not going to let his first season in Cleveland finish with a whimper. I really think he's going to turn it on against these, meandering defenses and really feast to show people he's still the same player he was with the Giants. I also expect Mayfield to pick it up a bit. So with something that a year ago would have been a lock, a plug and play, now it has to be said, target Odell Beckham Jr., go get him for the playoffs and the run-up to the playoffs, win your league.
Who the heck would you trade away to get OBJ, though?
I mean, somebody like DJ Chark. He's got quad issues now. He's had the easiest strength of schedule for almost all wide receivers. So his numbers look really good, but it's not about what they've done already. It's about what will win you your league in those weeks that matter. Because it doesn't matter if you have the highest point total at the end of the year if you were ousted in the first or second round.
I think anybody with OBJ would look at DJ Chark, the wide receiver 4 on the season, and say, how do I not take this deal?
Exactly.
And,
what have you done for me lately?
Right. To think before the year started that we could trade DJ Chark for Odell Beckham Jr., you would all laugh at me.
Absolutely.
But based on some of the transaction trends that Landon and I saw today on Yahoo, this would be one of the better offers than Odell Beckham Jr. has been traded for. So, right. Like Odell.
You got to go with talent when you can.
Yeah, 100%. So, this has been fun. Really, really enjoyed going through a lot of these, rest of season schedules, trying to flip some players, getting crafty here. These are the things that our listeners need to know in order to potentially take advantage of some value and make the right moves going into playoff time. So, if you are in any sort of situation, you're still with us, you're listening, please hit any of us up on Twitter or Instagram. Get into the DMs and just ask, hey, man, what do you think about this trade? We're happy to give you our 2 cents and try to guide you through it as best we can. Again, that's SMS_fantasy on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Go ahead and hit us up there. We really, really appreciate you guys kicking it with us for this 45, 50 minutes. And if you're on YouTube, go ahead, click that subscribe button, and leave us a comment in the comment section what you liked, who had the best costume. We'd love to hear from you. And if you can, hop over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Your ratings mean the world to us. They help this podcast grow, and we want to hear your feedback, how we can be better. So, for the four of us, thanks so much for kicking it, and we will see you guys next week, headed into Week 10 playoff trade deadline week. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at SMS_fantasy. Support this independent podcast at patreon.com/SaturdayMorningSnap.